We're just introducing. I'm passing it on now to Laxman, who's going to give us the political context analysis for this session. And we'll see if in that bit of time we can connect the screen. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we have someone holding on the back. So yeah, thank you once again. My name is Laxman. I work in the Lebanese Global Secretariat as one of the co-directors. And we are so excited to have all of you in the room. We see it's quite full. And we see that there is a lot of interest on the work with boys and men, particularly on the politics of what exactly this work means. So as we will delve into more of practical experiences of how this work has been translated in a local level, but I wanted to just give you a setting the stage kind of narrative around where is this work located within the broader gender justice area or LGBTIQ rights and social justice framework. Yeah. And that we, the work with boys and men, first of all, is to acknowledge that this work was built onto the initiative or the very important critical initiative that our feminist movement and feminist leaders had started. And just want to acknowledge that the work with boys and men was something that was initiated by the feminist leaders themselves. We as men didn't really come to say that, oh, suddenly we woke up and realized we need to do something with ourselves. And some of you may remember the call during the Beijing Platform for Action as well, that men need to look into themselves and how patriarchy is impacting them. And in turn, that is impacting other people around them. And that was a real call, building on to the ICPD in 1994. And then since then, there has been a wake-up call in those who are doing this work in the field. And some of us come from that background with being questioned, being pushed by the feminist movement and leaders to really look into what patriarchy is doing to us. And as a fact of those populations that enjoy most of the privilege in our patriarchal system, then what are our roles and responsibilities once we are aware of kind of privilege and power we bring. And in that, I think where the systems change will come in is that it's not only about we as boys and men realizing, oh, we are gender beings and we need to change, we have to change our behavior, we need to do something for the betterment of women and LGBTIQ population, but also more so about what are we doing, not only at our own individual behavior level, but also taking this transformation into the different spaces we are part of. When we talk about engaging boys and men, it looks like we are calling men to come and engage, right? So the other side of the flip coin is also that how do we bring this conversation in this space where men are really present? When you look at the political sphere, the public sphere, economic, the cultural, religion, whatever space you see, there are men already involved. The question is, are we bringing the conversation around gender in those spaces or not, right? So as men and boys identified individuals who are in this field, are we doing enough to push back against at the systems level? Not only saying I am doing at my personal level this, but also to look at what I am doing to push back to change the system in my family first. Then take it to the other space that I'm part of, because we know we all have intersectional identities, right? I'm not just a man coming from Nepal, currently living in DC, and I have a small family, right? But I have other multiple identities at the same time that I need to bring this politics of what I am doing in the name of gender equality into those spaces as well. So I think that's where the systems change transformation. That's what is being called, actually was called during the Beijing platform, right? Beijing conference was to look into men pushing the boundary and also working to creating systems transformation. And then also sometimes you may hear that we talk about gender transformative approaches with men and boys, right? So when it comes to gender transformation and at a systems transformation level, and that's where the transformation should look like, and that we make sure the transformation is brought in different layers. So you may have heard socio-ecological model, right? So we heard what I can do as individual, but also what does it mean in the family, the systems that I am part of as well. And then also the idea of this work is to also push men to have critical analysis of self. So the idea is not to make men comfortable, right? The idea of this work is to push men to feel uncomfortable because of the privilege and power we have as part of the patriarchal system that is manifested in different forms. Whether it's climate justice agenda right now, you can see a huge pushback by majority male-identified individuals or male politicians or those in positions of power, but also on other areas like the right, the right to bodily autonomy is a big issue right now, right? So how does then men become engaged in a way that can push the envelope to challenge some of these stereotypical systems that are put in place and ask for transformation? So I think that's what this work is currently looking at, but also to look at different forms of manifestation, right? Militarization, decolonization, all the buzzwords that we keep here. So how do we connect that so that it doesn't become a very siloed work? For example, I'm working on violence prevention, but I will not talk about bodily autonomy, or I will not talk about peace and security. So that somewhere, again, the intersectional analysis should incorporate, and that's where our mission says, is that we work on transforming masculinities and by working with boys and men, but through intersectional feminist approaches. And that means how do we connect with these different kinds of intersectional or interdependent systems, which are kind of manifestations of patriarchal systems that we engage with and help transform those systems that are so interdependent and intercultural. And then again is that this work cannot be very colonial approach as we see as well, right? It has to be done with people who have the relevant expertise located in the context that we are engaging in. So that's what I think we have tried to bring colleagues who are working in different areas of work, that you listen to how this work has been transformed or how evolving in the sector. So I think with that broad paradigm of space of how and where the work with men and masculinities is located, I'll hand it over to looking at the practical experiences of that. This is all theories, right? But what exactly happens, because the field has moved from only talking about why to actually moved on to talking about how. Because more than anything else, the importance is how exactly this work is being done and whether or not it has meaningfully and significantly contributed in pushing the feminist agenda forward at whatever level we are working. So I'll stop there for you.
I think if we can't have it fixed when the speakers come on screen, I think if we hold the microphone to the speaker, we'll just turn the computer around and you'll be able to hear them even though they're not on the visual. So I think we're just going to move ahead. Colleagues joining online, I think that's what we'll try. We'll just put the microphone up to the speaker, and even though we won't be able to show your slides, if you wouldn't mind moving through your presentation, if that's okay, just verbally, no? And we'll pin you in a big picture so that, yeah, there's a bit of a view for you here. But having said that, we're moving to 3 practical examples of gender transformative work so we can extract some lessons learned, challenges, and promising practices, no? Thank you so much, and over to you, Fidele.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Hi, everyone. My name is Fidele Rutayisire. I am the Executive Director of the Rwanda Men's Resource Center, known as RWAMREC. We are also coordinating the Rwanda Men Engage Network, and I'm honored to be part of this discussion. I am also a he for she advocate, and I had prepared a video to show you how we are transforming masculinity norms, but unfortunately I can't present. So now I'm going to use or to tell you about how we have been transforming masculinities using one of the program called Bandebereho. So Bandebereho is a Kinyarwanda word which means a role model. So it's a gender transformative program which actually uses fatherhood as an entry point to actually transform masculinity norms, to transform how men think about themselves, and to change their perceptions, to change their attitudes. So it's a a gender transformative couples intervention which has been designed for parents of children under 5 years old. And it's a small group education intervention which uses fatherhood as an entry point, recognizing that the transition to become a father is an important opportunity to really work with men and boys, to engage men in reproductive, maternal, newborn, and child health, but also to engage men in preventing violence against women, to engage men in caregiving, especially child care, but also it is designed to equip parents with parenting skills, with health and relationship skills, as well as informing parents on how really to become gender equitable couples, but also to discuss about non-violent communication in the couples. So the intervention also uses the small group education to practice new behavior in safe and supportive group environment. So the group education is a safe space whereby couples get together and discuss about their everyday challenges, their everyday issues. And the theory of change which we use is actually we provide the new skills to these couples, and within this small group education, they critically reflect, they discuss critically, they make a dialogue on different issues like gender, power, violence at couples level, and then they get new skills, new attitudes, new behaviors. They go at home, they practice, they are given homework exercises. For instance, they learn how to carry a baby, how to change diapers, how to discuss without violence. And I'm sorry, the video which we had planned, we are not able to show it, but hopefully at the end we shall be able to show it. And they critically reflect and discuss about those issues, and they rehearse, they practice it, they internalize it, and then after they leave it, they go into the community, they change the community members, and they become agent of change. So this intervention actually has started in 2013 as a pilot phase, working with the community members. So we first of all worked with the Rwanda Biomedical Center, which is under the Ministry of Health. And in the pilot phase, we trained 48 fathers as community facilitators to lead those small groups in the communities. And then we were able also to reach 1,728 couples, which participated in group education in 4 districts as a pilot phase. So then after the pilot phase, we conducted a randomized control trial to look at whether there is an impact. And we found out that with one intervention, we were able to reach multiple outcomes. For instance, the intervention has been able to reduce 40% of intimate partner violence, especially physical violence. And the key impacts of the intervention after the pilot phase actually there were less violence at couples level, but also there were increase of men accompaniment of their couples to the antenatal care, but also there was less harsh punishment of children, and also the household activities, sharing household activities within the families has increased. And the pilot phase, after the pilot phase, we started what we call transition to scale. We tested whether we can include or integrate the intervention within the health system using the community health workers. And after we tested the pilot phase, we did the transition to scale. And after the transition to scale, we realized that it is possible to work with community health workers, which is an existing government structure at community level. And we did the transition to scale, and we found out that it is possible to deliver the intervention with fidelity and quality. And lucky that the Parliament of Rwanda has recommended the scale up of the intervention together with the Office of the Prime Minister, which recommended also the government to make sure that the program is taken to big scale. So now, after the transition to scale, we are now testing, we are taking the intervention to big scale. So we are now scaling the intervention within 2 districts, and after the 2 districts, we shall be able to go into the 30 districts of the country. So for sustainability purposes, we are integrating the intervention within the health system using existing government structure called community health workers. Then RWAMREC will provide a minimum supervision and minimum technical support to make sure that the intervention lasts longer, to make sure that after RWAMREC, the government will continue to implement it, and you also using the national budget. So that's how it is, and thank you very much for your attention. Once again, if the technical side allows us, we shall show you a video to show concretely how it works. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and hopefully we can get the tech working and show the video. And you raised a really good point. Once we have located a methodology that works, but then some of the challenges of scaling that, ensuring that we maintain fidelity, to the gender transformative nature of the intervention. And this is actually a common thread that we want to pull through all of the speakers, because it's definitely something, that we need to explore further and nuance our understanding of some of the challenges in that. Yeah, I wonder if there's any questions. Maybe we'll take one question, because hopefully we'll have the setup in a few minutes. Yeah, please go ahead. If you don't mind speaking with the microphone.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emma. I guess. Okay. I guess my question is I think the thing that I struggle with the most when I'm so I work with humanitarian agencies. I think the thing that I struggle with the most when I work with sustainability, because the funding is 2 to 5%, like a lot harder to get.
Pero tiene el link para interpretar.
Private vendors get hired. They don't want it to be like that because
Pero no sé ahora.
it is like so as far as methodology that works, it's okay, well, we need someone to be interested in it, like money to do it. So I guess I'm curious how you find funding that lasts that long, and how do you make the program sustainable to the point where you lose the funding, you're ensuring that the program.
Then we have used the GEM scale.
Trying to get it to go on the screen.
Also use
Which it could be this could be bad.
The international, the images, the International Men and Gender Equality Survey, which ICRW has contributed to. So men have many benefits, and the randomized control trial has shown that men, for instance, there have been reduction of harsh punishment to children, and also men are mentally
It's on.
stable.
It shouldn't read it. It's not from here. It's not picking it up from here. This could be bad. But they will do the same thing on that computer.
But also the use of
On the computer's on automatic. Mirror means on both.
outcomes. And for your information, we did another randomized controlled trial after 6 years to see whether the changes have been sustained. And we found out that the changes have been sustained. So now
I don't have that.
really
No.
make sure that the program lasts longer. That's why we are now integrating
I don't have the other one.
it
They use it on
into the
11.
existing health system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome. We'll put you so everyone can see you at least here.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lina Sabra, the Executive Director of the Lebanese Association for Family Health, Salama. It's a member association of the International Planned Parenthood Federation, IPPF. We are mainly working on sexual and reproductive health and rights. We are also member of the steering committee of the Men Engage Network Lebanon. From our side, our gender transformative approach to feminist system change is through engaging young men and boys in sexual and reproductive health and family planning and GBV, gender-based violence. This approach will lead to fulfill women's rights, reduce GBV, prevent stigma and discrimination, prevent unintended pregnancies and unsafe abortion, and prevent STIs and HIV. So under this approach, we are working on empowering young people, including young men and boys, to make informed decisions regarding their sexual and reproductive health and rights in a society free of stigma and discrimination. Our entry points to engage young men in sexual and reproductive health and rights are comprehensive sexuality education, CSE, program RA2, Amaze videos, youth-friendly services, and advocacy. Under our comprehensive sexuality education curriculum, we are training young people, young men and boys, on sexual and reproductive health issues, all the sexual and reproductive health issues, including gender-based violence and human rights as cross-cutting issues. So these peer educators or these young men are also raising the awareness of other young people in the societies. We are working on their information, skills and attitudes in order to raise the awareness of other peoples. The program RA2, it's a program to engage men in GBV and sexual and reproductive health and rights. We have trained 10 NGOs in Lebanon on this program, and these NGOs are implementing the program in different communities in Lebanon. We have also Amaze videos. These videos are videos on sexuality education for adolescents from 10 to 14 years old. These videos are about sexual and reproductive health and rights issues tailored for this range of age. We are dubbing them in English and posting them on social media, and also we are presenting them to adolescents in different ways in schools, clinics, etc. So our main channels to provide these trainings and these awareness sessions for young people and young men to be engaged in sexual and reproductive health are schools, institutes, orphanages, clinics, universities, camps, municipalities, youth centers, and also we are posting them online. On our social media platforms. To have a good impact in the communities, we are raising the awareness of these young people, advocating for sexual and reproductive health and rights and the rights of women. And also at the end, we are linking these awareness sessions, information, advocacy work to the services. During the last 3 years, our results were as following. We have trained 42 peer educators on sexual and reproductive health and rights and comprehensive sexuality education. We have produced 40 videos on sexual and reproductive health for adolescents. We have produced 22 videos on CSE for young people. We have raising the awareness of around 3,000 young people on CSE, and we have reached around 12 million adolescents through our social media, through the videos. As you know, the key challenges in our society and in our communities are different, such as we still have these conservative communities and reproductive health and rights topics, and GBV are still taboo for people. There is still a lack of knowledge regarding the rights. The women don't know about their rights, and the young girls and adult women, they don't know that what are their rights and how to fulfill their rights. So that's why we are raising their awareness and the awareness of men and young boys to participate in these programs. Some parents refuse to raise the awareness of their children on sexual and reproductive health and GBV because they are sensitive issues. The key achievements and lessons learned from these programs and approaches were that schools, university, orphanages, institutes, and some parents are contacting us and asking us to provide these sessions and to present these videos to their students, their children, and young people. Young men are engaged in everything, in all the activities of the association at all levels, from raising the awareness, providing services. They are helping in the clinics and GBV screening, VCT testing, and raising the awareness of women and men, male and young men and girls on sexual and reproductive health. They are helping in reducing GBV in the community and preventing stigma and discrimination. Finally, engaging men in sexual and reproductive health and rights promotes the well-being of women. So this is was one of our key achievements. Thank you.
We'll move ahead to the next participant and then open up a Q&A for all of you. And just to note, we can hear you, but Sarah, if you don't mind speaking quite loud, I think it will be great, no, in terms of the room, because the sound is just so. And just to note, participants aren't being able to see any of the visuals, no? So we're just hearing your voice. Thanks so much. So the last case study that we'll discuss is SASA from Raising Voices. So Sarah, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, first of all? Yes?
Yeah,
okay,
great. And thanks.
Great. I'm Sara Siebert. I'm a technical advisor with Raising Voices. My colleagues in Kampala are asleep now, I think, so that is why you get me today. Raising Voices is a feminist nonprofit organization based in Kampala, Uganda, working toward the prevention of violence against women and children. And we provide training and technical We provide training and technical support to partners all over the world who are interested in adapting and applying approaches for violence prevention. And we're also interested in learning and convene thought leadership spaces to influence the ecosystem of violence prevention. And so SASA Together, that I'm here to talk about today, is an approach created by Raising Voices that involves both women and men in informal spaces integrated into everyday lives of community members. So it isn't all about training workshops, it's about mobilizing the entire community to change norms to prevent violence against women. SASA has been adapted already to over 35 countries around the world in a pretty organic process. I mean, organizations asking for it, saying we heard about its success, can we use it in our communities? And especially the interest has expanded since research proved its effectiveness at preventing violence at a community level. And at SASA's 10-year anniversary, Raising Voices went through a whole process with partners to update it based on what partners have learned through practice, what we have learned through providing the technical assistance on it, and the current evidence base. So particularly as the use of SASA continues to spread, we looked at what worked, what didn't, what was missing, what the field needs now, and any and all ways we could make SASA stronger. So the result is SASA Together. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the results of the study in Kampala on SASA. So there are a number of different impacts that were found, but one that is widely cited is that it was found effective at preventing physical intimate partner violence at the level of the whole community, reducing risk by over 50% in SASA communities compared to control communities in a randomized controlled trial. So there's a lot of information online about that. Feel free to look up some of the other impacts. I won't go through all of them right now, all of the statistics, but suffice it to say that that is what has generated a lot of the interest around SASA and encouraged a number of other organizations and countries to take it on. So I wanted to talk, relevant to this presentation, about what the essential elements are of SASA and how to, what makes it work. Namely, benefits-based activism, a gender power analysis, a phased process of change, and holistic community engagement. So I want to talk about how each of these relates to today's conversation. So in terms of benefits-based activism, and this is a benefits-based approach emphasizes the benefits of nonviolence over the consequences of violence and encourages all of us, every community member, every person, whomever we are, to find the activist within. And it means that everyday community members of all ages, genders, and social circles can learn to weave interesting conversations into their everyday lives about power and relationships, and that all types of people come to know and feel the benefits of nonviolence for themselves and for their families and communities, until there's a critical mass of people that want to start to do something about it. Yeah. So the positive framing about benefits can help people who wish to engage in the conversation, and it also helps for men and boys to avoid feeling judged or attacked. So the second essential is a gender power analysis and how it helps us to address the root cause of violence against women, which is the power imbalance between women and men at both individual and community levels. So each phase of SASA works with a different type of power. And I guess just to say that power is something that we all navigate. and that we can each use positively or negatively. It's a constant dynamic in all of our lives, in all of our interactions, in all of our relationships. So when we start with ourselves, we discuss how it is that we use our power in any of our relationships. And often we find that at the beginning, people think of power as a limited thing, and that many men feel that they'll lose power if women gain power. And so helping people to see power differently and that we all benefit when we balance it changes the conversation in really practical and important ways. It also helps us get to the root of violence against women. And we've found this to be a really effective alternative to simply talking about gender. So conversations about power are ones that all of us can identify with, and they open up those practical discussions that can get at that root. In other words, so men may often disengage with conversations about gender and feel that it's a women's issue, not relevant to them, whereas the conversation about power can be relevant in everyone's lives. So then, to move to the next essential element of SASA, the 4 phases of change. So change takes place, we found, in predictable stages across most groups. And this has worked in communities in many different countries so far. And each phase guides the community through a different stage of change. So we might begin at a place where the community doesn't think violence against women is a problem. And then the community moves to a place of awareness, where they begin to recognize and unpack the problem. And often we find that this is where programs get stuck, that we keep raising awareness and raising awareness forever and ever. And what we found with SASA is that the community can move to a further phase together. And getting to that place for preparation of action in which community members consider alternatives to violence and support each other through change. And then into a place of collective action and maintenance, by which kind of there's a new normal, and we act out of that new normal individually and across the community in a way that sustains change. So the 4 phases helps us to be strategic by using a common framework for understanding how people change to guide the community through a process of change. So each phase is a different stage of behavior change. And because SASA Together works to change at the level of the entire community, it helps the community through these stages, and that takes time. It takes 3 to 5 years to get through this process. The gradual phased process of change can also help to avoid the backlash from men, from power holders, by not rushing communities faster than they're able to go, but by paying attention to where the community is and helping them along at each stage. Then finally, the 4th kind of essential element that we talk about is holistic community engagement. That community level change requires all layers of people in community life, from individual and interpersonal levels to community levels to institutions and society. It's based on, the ecological model that Lori Heisey in 1998 talked about, all of the different levels of a community that can reinforce violence. And this recognizes the multiple influences that actually could prevent violence, that we could flip all of that on its head. And so in prevention, we want to create a critical mass of support across the entire community. This is part of the reason that we don't really recommend only engaging women or only engaging men, because we're all keepers of social norms in a community, and we can all use our power positively to prevent violence. So we've actually found community mobilization to be a more helpful framing than male engagement, because it allows women and girls to remain centered while engaging everyone with power, which is everyone, right, to create change throughout all circles of influence in a community. This is also critical because SASA Together creates change at that community level, not just in the groups where we pull together in full formal workshops. So we work within the spaces where people already function in the community. It was mentioned earlier, like, don't wait for men to come to your workshop, go to where the men are, right? Similarly, We go to the spaces where anyone in a community already is, and then they use their activism to spark dialogue in those spaces. The community activist leaders and allies spark dialogue in those spaces. And in most communities, people of different ages and genders are mixed up in different spaces. So holistic community engagement allows us to engage diverse holders of social norms. So just to conclude with some overall recommendations, I've kind of taken you through how SASA works and what we have kind of figured out made it effective. And just to pull it all together a little bit, social norms change, we have found, requires the engagement of people of all genders, or that holistic community engagement, and requires an intersectional lens, deeper reflections and recognitions of power and privilege among each of us. And that it's critical that efforts that engage men and boys be informed by the voices and perspectives of women and girls, because accountability is critical. So just to speak to the question that this whole panel has raised, the entire community, when some basic principles and essentials, as we call them, are followed, can promote feminist systems change. Men and boys alone don't do that, but men and boys along with women and girls in their communities can. So thank you very much for engagement despite the tech issues today.
Thank you so much, Sara. Wonderful presentation, and we've heard such a very a series of examples, no, on effective interventions, gender transformative interventions, inclusive of engaging men and boys. And I'm sure our participants have questions, but I think we have about 30 minutes left. Let's go to Jennifer from COFEM before we open up to a Q&A. Jennifer, would you mind leading us through a critical feminist analysis on what do we observe as some of the main challenges, no, when we are engaging men and boys in our interventions? Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing on the work of COFEM, whom has been very dedicated, no, to this analysis.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I hope everyone can hear me. So my name is Jennifer Amadi, and I am a member of COFEM. COFEM means the Coalition of Feminists for Social Change, and I also support COFEM as the West African Regional Liaison. So just to be enforced to know, COFEM is a collective of activists, academics, and practitioners working globally to end violence against women and girls. I'll be looking at critical perspective on gender transformation that contribute to feminist system change. My contribution is more reflective, and for me, I have this to share. This may not be a popular opinion, but I've seen it in several meetings. I've seen it in conferences happen, where a male ally gets on the podium and makes a comment such as, I am a feminist and I support, feminist causes. However, I feel sad, that women are the enemies of themselves.
Sorry to interrupt. You may have to speak a little louder.
Okay, thank you so much.
That.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, so I was sharing this popular unpopular opinion, so to say, but this is actually my experience in several meetings I've been, both locally and regionally, where a male ally comes on the podium and he said something like, I'm a feminist, he's like saying things like this, and I support feminist causes. However, I feel women are enemies to themselves. So for me, as a feminist and a young woman, I feel concerned with this kind of collaborative solidarity, from a male ally. I feel maneuvered, and I feel, forced to believe that women truly are limiting themselves, and enemies to themselves. And I think that, a men and boys support for feminist system change should not do any harm, and it should more prioritize accountability to women and girls. And this is actually what I believe. And I know, and by accountability, I'm looking at, where men and boys work, and contribution to feminist system change means prioritizing the rights and needs of women and girls, and ensuring that, they do not, should I say, sustain or instigate harm among women themselves. And also there is this, among other things, that it means accountability to women and girls could mean supporting women's leadership and decision-making processes, across programs, advocacy, strategies, and of course, policy level. I'm talking about at all levels, both at the international level, at the regional level, and at the local levels. Now, looking at, I am a researcher because I'm currently a PhD student, and I share in the long-standing history of feminist concern around work with men and boys. And I know there are several, should I say concern, but what I know is, what I've seen is, in those concerns, it all centers around do no harm. By that word, do no harm, it means that, when men and boys involved in the work to end gender-based violence, it should not, disempower or sideline women. It should never, it should not, support, should I say, further, I think I might use the word disenfranchisement. It should not, and it should not, support, should I say, further violence against women, and also minimized, I'm talking about here, it should not minimize confidentiality in terms of response, either facility-based or the other side. So also there is also this need to actively, challenge the system. It's always there because, one, when someone has opportunity and has power privilege, which we all do at different levels, but there is always, the tendency, if you're not reflective, if you're not careful, to perpetuate that same, should I say, that same problem you're trying to solve. So I think another concern that we have is that how actively can men and boys engage in the work to end violence against men and girls, reduce, or should I say, restructure their privilege in ways that it secures the full human rights of women and girls. That's another thing. And also, yes, let's talk about funding. And I think men and boys' involvement in ending gender-based violence should not, critically diverse, limited and depleting funding sources for women-based organizations to themselves. That it's where I'm coming from. Then also, we shouldn't also change the framing and narrative, centering it like, oh, men and boys, they are also victims or survivors of gender-based violence, of which we know, but it shouldn't really center them, taking off women and girls who are, should I say, most vulnerable in these particular cases. And also, men and boys' involvement in ending violence against women and girls should also take into consideration, strong analysis and understanding of how gender inequality justifies violence, as experienced by women and girls in their diversity. It's really super important. And I think these are actually some of the reservations we could have. And also, yes, there should be sort of intentional integration of intersectionality in their own, should I say, collaborative work with women and girls to end GBV. And of course, personally, I think I will include, we should create and maintain, or should I say, men and boys should create and maintain brave spaces. I am not talking about safe spaces here, but I'm talking about brave spaces for women and girls to engage and lead without fear of being prejudged or labeled, for who they are. Now, these aside, we all know evidence has shown it, and it is indisputable that to end gender-based violence requires joint effort with men and boys, to transform power relations and to support feminist system change. There is no doubt with that. But for gender-based violence intervention to truly address power relations and promote feminist system change, we need to, have feminist communities voices to be clear. Should I say feminist community voices need to be clear, vocal, and united, about men's engagement. So what it means that feminists, basically women and girls, they have to, initiate and outline what what they want, should I say, what typical male and positive male involvement should look like. And also male and boys, contribution and effort must not overlook gender inequality as, root cause of gender-based violence. That should not, be overlooked. And of course, men's engagement must have a feminist political agenda. This is really very important. We just don't want, engage men, engage boys, which is really very super important, but we want it to have a political agenda. And I know it is also it is important to know that if men and boys are being engaged, or if their engagement fails to should I say address gender inequality, it will automatically reinforce norms around men's power over women, and that is what we do not want. So I will just stop here and wait to reflect to questions that may be posed. Thank you so much. Over, Jenny.
I can hear us. You've raised so many critical questions, that we need to be extremely attentive to in any effort to engage men and boys in our work. You've raised from an overtly victimized narrative, right, of men and boys, to not addressing gendered power dynamics, therefore reinforcing patriarchal, right, dynamics within our interventions, to competing for funding. It's just, thank you so much for your incredible recap of all of the potential pitfalls, where really, if we're not honing in on a gender transformative approach, we are in fact risking interventions that are harmful instead of contributing to feminist agendas for systems change. So thank you very much for raising that, Jennifer, really appreciative. And maybe my colleagues online, but then for all of you here, COFEM has produced quite a few resources. They're called pocketbooks, and there's some specifically on critical analysis of work with men and boys. And it's a recap of what Jennifer shared with us here, including the need for all interventions to be centered on accountability and follow the leadership of feminist, women's rights, LGBTIQ, youth, and other marginalized movements, which is a central pillar of our work as Men Engage. We'll pause there. Maybe Q&A. Laxman, would you mind leading us through that? And I'll be checking online. So colleagues online, if you have any questions for all panelists, let us know. And then Laxman, for all of you here, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks for clearing the dots with all the challenges and innovativeness in making sure the sound and things are working. So any questions that you would like to bring? I think you had raised your hand way before. I'll give you and then come to you.
I appreciate so much the into allowing men and boys to understand that with their genders, their strength and their capacity, that they also need to be aware of the challenges that gender provides. But one thing I've always wondered in all this research, is there anything that is being addressed to the media, to the sensationalism of men being always violent or being aggressive on platforms like video games, like movies, like the athletic sports? I mean, there are so few role models for men that can show them being strong, but yet also being compassionate, that they can be both, that they can be sensitive and caring and loving towards women and children, that they don't always have to be perceived as they are shown as athletes that beat up, or, men that are always labeled as violent. Because I think that's a norm, as you called it, that is inaccurate, but is often portrayed in Hollywood and across the world in those types of movies, films, whatever.
Yeah.
Very few role models that are available for them.
So, maybe a few more questions.
Thank you for the presenters, journalists, the work for the umbrella, building SASA to organizations together from gender equality and women. I have a reflection around men engage men and boys who are gender equality and women's empowerment. As I observe, our interventions target adult men and young boys, and we need to engage young boys from the early ages And I think the schools are the entry point where we can put more efforts to build an equal society, which is more gender transformative as we wish. So I call upon everyone to think about that and start thinking of interventions that can target schools even from the nursery schools up to the secondary schools. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. We'll take one more. Yes. You may have to come in the front. Sorry about that.
Hi. So my name is Charlie Rose. I'm from the Yukon, Canada. And I had a question because we also want to implement something that is more like an engaged program. And I just had I'm also a social worker, and I had a question about how concretely you intervene with people, with men, especially in your couple session. So I was wondering how you prevent this session from becoming this session instead of a we session like as a couple. And we, because we started this session by saying that men are unfortunately most of the perpetrators. Okay. And so my question is, have you ever experienced this phenomenon? And if yes, how do you handle it? Is it clear? Is my question? Thank you.
From South Africa. I wanted to ask this comrades and colleagues in Rwanda. I do work with secondary school going learners. First to appreciate everyone. So the pedagogical approaches, I'm getting very excited in my head to get back home and think about things differently. I wanted to ask folks from Rwanda, how do you reconcile this work and the status of things around the LGBTQIA in Rwanda? Does it not come up? Are you playing a role in bolstering that? Because if you're able to systemize this work through government, then surely we should be having a conversation around DCOFEM as well.
Maybe we respond to that. Would you like to go, and then if anyone online wants to?
Okay, so thank you very much for the comments and the question. For my colleague from Canada, our intervention actually targets fathers or parents of 5 years old children. So, and it is a health intervention. So we are engaging men and their wives into maternal health, child health, newborn, and it uses small group education to critically reflect and question gender roles, gender inequitable norms about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. So the intervention is a community-based intervention, a gender transformative community-based intervention. And we are in the health system. So we have other interventions targeting young people, targeting couples, but in women's economic empowerment. But for this one, it is purely health intervention, targeting multiple outcomes, including reproductive health, maternal health, child care, and engagement in violence prevention, women's violence, but also violence against children. So we have sessions whereby men only get together, but also we have sessions whereby they come together and discuss about it. So it is not about men's sessions only. We have sessions where we combine them. And this is actually a program which has been adapted from Program P, started from Brazil, and it has been adapted to the Rwandan context. And again, we have tested it, and it worked well in the Rwandan context. So coming back to your question, so the program is working with heterosexual couples. But we have other programs targeting LGBTQ, especially within the city, but this is really working at community level, but targeting heterosexual couples. Thank you. Anyone online?
Any of our speakers online? There was a clear question, no? What is the role of work with men and boys in advancing LGBTIQ rights, no? And how does that factor into work to transform patriarchal masculinities? Linda, Sarah, or even Jennifer, no? Any thoughts on that? And then I put an open invite to participants online if you had any questions, but
so we have
you want to address
we have
that?
strict 10 minutes left, almost now 6 minutes. Oh, this is gone again? Looks like it works on a time table. No? Yeah? It's back? Not yet? Oh dear. Okay. This is one. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay. This is. Okay. Anyway, I'll try to speak loud. So I think, yeah, I think brilliant question. So I think one of the things that we are trying to do within the work as meaning is one is to really question the gender binary approach in many of the work that we do, right? In the international development, gender and development paradigm, we, knowingly or unknowingly, we sometimes have, made mistakes on reinforcing gender binary by, designing certain programs in a certain way. So now lately what we have done is to sort of organize in a way that can really challenge the gender binary approach in the work that we have been doing and involved so far. So I would say it's not yet there as much as we would have liked to, but we are slowly progressing in terms of applying, not to reinforce the gender binary, organizing at all levels, One of the challenges obviously is in the context of Africa or Middle East or even South Asia, is the government don't want to talk about it. But I think as many engaged within the civil society spaces we are part of, we have started, making that more and more explicit. So if you look at some document I was referring as well, we have made that explicit commitment as many as Alliance to really walk in challenging gender binary and hence working under the leadership of LGBTIQ rights movements as well in making the work around this, transforming masculinities a little more beyond gender binary. So I think that's what we are trying to do as well. And I think, with terms of sports and media and so on, there's also a very small section that is doing that work. So in case of Canada, we have a member called White Ribbon Canada, who's been working with the hockey teams, the players, in working with them on how can they challenge this, the really masculine culture that is there in the sports. And then colleagues in South Africa and African context as well, they have applied sports as a tool. And colleagues at ICRW, they have done a wonderful work with how do we work with young boys in school settings on using sports as a tool for transformation. So there are very good two innovative projects that came out from there as well. So there are bits and pieces. So the work in Brazil, for example, was initiated by an institution called Promundo, now called Equimundo, by using football meaning soccer, as a tool for community transformation and really working to transform the gender norms and around masculinity. So there are bits and pieces that's going on in terms of applying sports as a way to engage boys from an early age to across all age range on using that. But I think one thing that really lately we are realizing there are few research going on right now is to look at the influence of violent video games on reinforcing the norm. So Equimundo again has done a research on looking into how the norms around young boys are being set by these violent games, and which is really, really alarming. And there was a study done again by Equimundo on which is they call Man Box in Mexico, UK, and US, which really showed an alarming spectrum of how young boys are learning the stereotypical gender norms through these games and video games as well. but there is a lot of analysis being done as well on the media, but not much of programs, I must say, on using of media as a way to engage population of different. I think, and then in the whole work with men and boys, one thing that we do make sure, as Sara was presenting in SASA, no, where is the content coming from? So I think the point around are you essentializing boys and men is actually also an interesting conversation to think about. Is that who is benefiting from this, right? So are we just saying men, you need to work for women? That's where I think the notions around he for she comes in, and we have a problem with that openly sharing. Is that it's not about men doing services for women, but we are talking about as it's more of the community transformation that benefits everyone, right? It's not about men giving up power. Power is not something that you suddenly give up, right? It's about sharing and using a power that we have. We all have any kind of power. I may be powerful in one relationship, but then I may be powerless in other relationship. But how can I conflict that I am a victim of that one and then not talk about the power I'm enjoying here, right? So I think that is what we are trying to problematize a bit of the whole concept of whether we are essentializing men, or how do we make sure that the conversation remains feminist informed. So the last point that I'll close with that maybe is, in any of the work that we do as MIGEPROF or members of MIGEPROF, and including the work in Rwanda, the work in Lebanon that you heard from, is that the content actually is informed by the feminist analysis of the context that where the programs are being done. So it's not that men and boys will sit and develop the content. It will be developed together with community members, and particularly also with our feminist colleagues in those contexts that will inform the work that will happen with boys and men. So it's not about the content about only by men led or men designing the whole content on what the conversation should look like, right? So it's a bit more political work in the sense that the content needs to resonate with the ask of feminist movements that are in those contexts. And that's where I think the feminist system sense comes in, is that the work with boys and men would also help not only to put men in pedestal, because that's what we are seeing with all these gender champions approach, is that we are celebrating men for saying something that they should have said way before, but then do not really mean it when it comes to the spaces they are in. So I think we're challenging those kind of approaches where we are again putting men into pedestal, right? Men speaking for gender, right? And occupying the spaces, whereas we should be reflecting on and taking a step back and listen to what feminist movement, LGBTIQ movement, young people are saying, and follow that on seeing what is it that we need to do in terms of adding value, and also making sure that transformation becomes sustainable in the community level. So we are exactly on time now, and we need to move out of the room. Thank you very much for joining.